Can everybody hear me? People in the back, thumbs up if awesome. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for coming to Destination College. We have a wonderful panel here who we're going to walk you through kind of what to expect over the next 18 months or so in the admissions process. Shout out to Julie and the rest of the St. A staff for hosting us today. This is a lot of work to put that together, so really appreciate their time and everything they give to this event. I'm going to let my panelists go down, introduce themselves. They'll also maybe share one interesting thing or something that you find fun about your school.
There you go. Good afternoon, everyone. I had to look and see what time it was. I'm Peg Richmond, Director of Admissions at Keene State, and I'm so pleased to see you all here today. The thing that comes to my mind when I think about a fun fact about Keene State is what I'm most proud of. And I'm most proud of the president of Keene State, Dr. Melinda Treadwell, who is an alum. She graduated from Keene State College. So it's a real unique point that we're able to make because very few colleges and universities can say that. So that's my proudest moment of Keene State.
Good afternoon. My name is Julie Landman. I am the Director of Admission here at Saint Anselm College. So welcome to the Hilltop. We're so thrilled that you're here today. Kind of a fun fact about St. A's, we host the presidential primary debates every 4 years here on campus. So it's a really cool experience for our students. They get to be part of the process, many of them interning with ABC News and Fox News and CNN. They get to meet the candidates. They get to be runners for the candidates. So it's a really cool experience.
Awesome. Hi, y'all. Oh, I will use my big theater voice. Hello, my name is Jackie Pasha. I use she, her pronouns. I'm an assistant director of admissions at Dartmouth College, also an alum of Dartmouth College. And I think the fun fact that I will share is that we not only just renovated our engineering and computer sciences building, but we're also renovating our arts building right now. So a lot of new, exciting things happening on campus.
We'll see what happens.
All right, so if whoever couldn't hear that, that's Jackie. She's awesome. She's with Dartmouth. We're excited to go. So what we're going to do is we have some prepared questions that we think most families in your situation may be asking, but we want to make sure we leave time at the end so that you have time to ask the questions that are important to you. Somebody here be thinking about building up the courage to be the first person to ask the question, because we always wait for the first, then the floodgates come. So somebody will prepare themselves for that as we go through. All right, so first question is going to be about the application. So you guys can jump in any order. Feel free to feed off each other. But what are the advantages and disadvantages to applying early action and early decision? And if somebody wants to define those before we start discussing the advantages and disadvantages, that'd be super helpful.
I'm happy to jump right in. So early action, early decision, regular decision. So those are 3 different application plans. There are other variations to those as well. So my first piece of advice is to, if you have schools on your list, find out what they offer for application plans. So is there an early action option? Is there an early decision option? Is there a regular decision option? Or is it rolling admission? So will they take applications at any point? Early action is an early plan. It has specific deadlines specifically for St. A's of November 15th. It is a non-binding application plan. That's what makes that different than early decision, which is a binding plan. Essentially, it's an agreement that you make when you submit the application. There's usually an early decision form or agreement that you actually submit with your application, signed by you, the applicant, typically a parent or guardian, and a school counselor as well. So binding essentially means this school is number one. If I'm admitted, I am going. It's a good fit academically. It's a good fit financially. So that's really key if you're looking at an early decision plan, that it is, you've done your research and you know that it is a financial fit for you and your family. So binding, you're admitted, you are then committed to that college. And I'll pass it over to Dartmouth to add a few things.
Yeah, so Dartmouth has early decision and regular decision. As we said, early decision is binding, so you'll choose one school to apply to early decision, and if you get into that school, you're going and your work is done. Echoing what you just said, you should really do your research on that school to make sure that that's where you want to end up, because if you get in, you're going, and you're going to figure it out as you go. So make sure you do that research ahead of time, and then we also do have regular decision.
Peg, do you want to talk about rolling as well while we're here?
Sure. So Keene State is rolling admissions, and what that means is we open our applications in early October, and there might be different dates for different colleges that are rolling admission, but it means that you can apply at any time after the beginning of October, and you will receive a decision typically within 10 days to 2 weeks. Some schools are rolling/open admission, which means that you can apply right up through the date that the semester starts in the fall. Others are rolling admission with a deadline. So Keene State has a preferred deadline of April 1st. Although rolling admission, and we will make decisions as they become complete, we still have a preferred deadline of April 1st.
I'll jump back in and answer the question that you had mentioned before. So what are some of the benefits to applying early action or early decision? And it does depend on you, the applicant, and also the school that you are, or the schools, I should say, that you're planning to apply to. Early action, honestly, the best benefit is that you're getting your application in early. That's a benefit for you. It's out of the way. You have plenty of time at that point. You'll get your decision back earlier. So that can really kind of take a little bit off your shoulders at that point. It does allow us to know that you're potentially ready to go at that point, so that can be a benefit on the college side and for you as the applicant. Early decision, because you're applying to one school early decision, it typically lets us know, I'm all in, like this is the place that I want to be. So that can definitely help in the application for you as the applicant. But it does depend on where you're at in the college search process. There are also benefits to applying regular decision depending on where you're at. So if you're sitting here and you're thinking, I want to spend a little extra time my senior year to bring up my GPA and maybe show them my second quarter grades or whatever it might be, applying a little bit later could potentially be a benefit for you. So my tip really is to just make sure that you're doing your research at each school that you're planning to apply to, and maybe ask them specifically when do most applicants apply? What are the specific deadlines? Are there any benefits to applying at a different time throughout my senior year?
So a lot of people here may have seen that there's been an increase in applications submitted across the country, right? And we know there's not more students, there's just more students applying to multiple schools. So what can students do to help their applications stand out in that process, to really jump out at the people that are reviewing? And is there anything that you feel is the most important thing for students to be submitting in the application process or keeping in mind during the application process?
Yeah, I can jump in on this a little bit. We've talked a little bit about doing your research about the schools that you're applying to, and I think something that's really helpful when you're putting together all the pieces of your application is to do some research about yourself and what story you want to be telling us and why that school is a good fit for you. So our wonderful president, Sian Liabaila, calls this me search, where you're doing research on kind of what do you want, what are your values, what are the things you're most excited for in college, and how do you find places that align with those values and align with those activities or opportunities that you want to have in your next step in education. So taking the time this spring, this summer, as you're putting the pieces of your application together to make sure that it's telling your story as accurately as it can, because you are the only you. There are no other people like you, so we want to make sure we're getting that kind of accurate snapshot of who you are as a student, as a person, as an applicant when you're applying, and that takes some time to think about yourself and the schools that you're looking into applying to.
The other way that you can stand out in the admissions process is to be engaged in the process. So if at all possible, attend events on campus or meet with someone from the admissions office if they're visiting your school or at a college fair. It just, because as exactly what Jackie's saying about, when you're writing your essays or your recommendations and you're thinking about telling your story, maybe in person tells your story the best, if at all possible. Now, what's really awesome about what's happened, there are some good things that came out of COVID, right? And one of them is how we're engaging with students virtually and how naturally that's coming to us and to you all. For example, yesterday, I had a student visit Keene State who is from Virginia. And it was a challenge for this student to come and visit at any other time. They were waiting, they were choosing their time because of the cost of travel, and they came to a program yesterday. I felt as if I knew Adam already because we had engaged in a number of meetings, virtual meetings. He had attended webinars with our president, with our financial aid office, and I just felt like I knew him already. So be engaged in the process is really one of the other ways that you could stand out.
I think this kind of is also touches on what Peg just said in demonstrated interest. So can you all walk the audience through what is demonstrated interest? And do you seek that? Do you track it? What are the ways to, if you that is important in your review process, what are those ways that students can be involved in that?
I think it's a great question, and every college probably has a different answer. So I will answer from our perspective and working here at St. A's. And so demonstrated interest, just generally speaking, is very similar to what Peg was saying in that it really shows us that you are engaged in the process. So visiting events, opening emails, students contacting admission officers and admission counselors. We love to work with parents and family members, but it's really the student that needs to be driving this process. And so we love to hear from students, whether that's an email, a phone call, a visit. We too work very closely, similar to Keene, in that if you're not able to make it to campus, we will do everything we can to meet with you virtually or to find a way to hear from you and to answer questions that you may have and learn more about you. So demonstrated interest is really just that, is being involved in the process. Letting us know that you are engaged in, this whole thing and that you are interested in the school. It may not make or break an admission decision depending on the institution, but there are so many aspects of the college process and the application review. So it might be reviewing for admission to the college. It might also be for scholarship pieces or things that you might be eligible for beyond that, maybe additional aid or special scholarships like for art or music or theater or something along those lines. So every college is, again, going to probably have a different answer. So it might be a good question to ask if you have maybe a top 3 or 4 schools, reaching out and asking sort of how that's tracked or if it's tracked in the admission process.
Yeah, and I can speak a little bit to Dartmouth specifically. So we're a school that doesn't track demonstrated interest. That doesn't mean we don't know that you've come to our campus or met us at a high school visit or emailed us 6 questions because you got a lot of roadblocks on your way. We still know all of those things. So I would echo that it's really important to be engaged in those ways, but we aren't tracking it necessarily as kind of a factor that we're using in our decisions. It does, however, allow you to learn much more about our school and to articulate to us why you're such a good fit for our school. So I think it's only going to benefit you to have that engagement with the schools you're interested in.
So I think one of the things I just want to touch on here that we keep hearing is make sure you're touching base with those schools that are really high on your list for any of the things we talk about today, right? We're going to try our best to give the broad strokes, also touch on our specific institutions, but making sure that as you are going through your college search, if there is most people have that top handful of schools. Make sure you're asking them about demonstrated interest and what their deadlines are, what their early application, early decision processes are. Because as we're going to try to do our best to give you the general idea, but those specifics are important. So kind of moving a little bit further into the process, right? We've talked a little bit about demonstrated interest, visiting schools. So I'd love to hear from each of you about how important GPA is in your admissions process and how you recalculate GPAs, if you do.
So GPA is important in the sense that it really does give, it's an indicator of your academic achievement in high school. So the GPA is important and it is a factor in reviewing of the application. But at a place like Keene State, what we first look at is how you've challenged yourself, the courses that you've chosen to take, and at what level. And that, to us, speaks more, I'm not going to say it speaks more than the GPA, but really is of equal value. Because the more academic courses you take, the more prepared you're going to be for college. So students who are, you have your minimum requirements for graduation from high school, and then they think, oh, senior year, I don't have to take math, or I don't have to take science, or I'm done with my histories, or whatever it might be. And we'll all tell you that you should take as many academic courses as you can right through graduation from high school, because again, that is going to best prepare you for college. The skills that you're acquiring within those academic courses are the skills that you'll need to be able to achieve at an academic level on our campuses. Those are the courses where you'll do the most reading, the most writing, you'll be working on communication skills and teams, you'll be doing research, you'll be solving problems, studying technology, studying global issues. Those are the courses where you do all that, and it will carry over and it will help you be most prepared for college. But then again, so then the second thing we look at is the GPA. So this is how you've challenged yourself, and then what grades did you receive in those courses that you challenged yourself? Because to be honest with you, students who haven't who haven't challenged themselves, we're going to question that. We're going to call you and ask you, why is your senior year such a weak selection of courses? Or why did you not, you had all A's in your freshman year. Why did you stay in basic level courses? Why didn't you move up to college prep? We will ask you those courses. So remember, challenge yourselves and work really hard, which is most important to us.
I'll echo a little bit of that and basically just say that the snapshot of your transcript, that really is the most important piece of your application. We will review every part of your application, every recommendation letter, all of that, every word you put on your application. But that transcript really, again, is the snapshot of your success in high school. And so we're going to look at the strength of your curriculum, the classes that you've taken. We will look at that overall recalculated GPA. We do recalculate GPAs at Saint Anselm. Similar to what we've been saying, every school will probably do it differently, so it's a great question to ask. It really should be one of the first questions that you ask. Will my GPA be recalculated? School counselors probably have that answer for you too. They're very knowledgeable of most of the schools that you'll be applying to. So recalculating the GPA specifically for St. A's, we're going to recalculate looking at your core subject areas. So the classes that are most relevant to what you'll be doing at Saint Anselm College. Again, depending on the institution, they may look at technology classes or classes specific to health sciences or things like that. It just depends on the type of institution that you're looking at. They'll all have their own process. So we're going to look at every piece of that application, and we're going to look at your transcript within the context of your high school. So what classes are offered to you, and what did you then take advantage of during your 4 years in high school?
Yeah, and I'll just add on that on the flip side of that, Dartmouth is a school that doesn't recalculate your GPA. So we're looking at your GPA on the same school that your high school is calculating that on. It might be out of 100, it might be out of 5 or 4. Sometimes it's out of like 113 for some fun reason. So also be aware of what your school's GPA scale is and kind of what does your transcript look like. I find that often I talk to students and you actually haven't had to ask for a transcript until you get to the college application process. So go in and talk to your guidance counselor and see what does that piece of paper look like? What do my classes and my grades look like? Is it clear what my classes are, or are they named something jumbled up in a combination of letters? Because that also happens sometimes. So we are looking at you, as you said, in kind of a holistic way, and something you'll hear me say very often is that GPA is one factor among many factors. So yes, it is something we are looking at and considering to see your preparation for college, but it is one factor among many different things we're looking at.
I'm curious if one of you would be willing to do like a little bit deeper dive into weighted versus unweighted GPA, and for the schools that do recalculate, like what that process is and the rationale behind it, right?
So we are on an unweighted scale, so we get to know all the high schools really well. We have a team of about 12 counselors who travel to your high school. We know your counselors usually on a first-name basis. So we get to know what is the grading scale at your high school. We do have to then convert it to a general unweighted 4.0 GPA, which can be tricky, but we're very good at it at this point. I would say that there is, you might think you have the school's the wildest grading scale, but we've seen it all. You might also be sitting here going, we actually don't have a GPA. That might be a narrative transcript. So again, we will likely probably contact your school counselor, learn a little bit more about you and how the narratives are written, and it allows for us to have an understanding of your academic experience based on that conversation as well.
I just want to add in for any of our homeschool families that, we keep talking about academic transcripts and GPAs, and it's important for you all to know that each of us, what we do at Keene State is we're looking at a homeschool transcript just like we would a transcript from a traditional setting. There may be sometimes, and oftentimes the family will call me first before I even have to ask the question, and they'll ask, how would you like us to prepare the evaluation for our student? And I'll give them a number of different options. As Julie mentioned, an evaluation is great and is acceptable. Grades are acceptable. So we really are looking at them the same as we are from a traditional school. Now, I'll tell you where the but is, in that when we're awarding our merit scholarships are based on GPA ranges. So you will receive this award if you have this GPA. So there are some families that I do work with and say to them, listen, I'm going to read this. I'm going to look at it. I know that this is not what your school or what your homeschool, what you may be presenting, but I will make the decision based on what you've presented in your narrative. But then we should sit down together and we should talk about how you evaluated and came up with that narrative and put a letter to it so that I can give them, that I can be fair and give them the merit award that they're eligible for. So that would be the only time that I would say in a narrative situation that I really did need a GPA.
Awesome. Thank you for going a little deeper in on that. So let's talk a little bit about SAT, ACT, the various standardized testings out there. If somebody wants to talk about what test optional means, how a student would know what your school prefers. And then I know there's some schools that are reinstating SATs and ACT as no longer optional but required, and our friends at Dartmouth are there, so Jacqueline, if you can talk about that when it gets to that time. But let's just talk all things test scores.
Ooh, test scores. So test optional means something different depending on the college, unfortunately. So again, I'm going to echo that. Do your research, ask questions. So at Saint Anselm College, we are test optional. We're test optional for all our programs. What you may see at some institutions is that they might require test scores for specific populations or specific programs. So historically, we required test scores for nursing. That we do not require them anymore. It is optional for all programs. So that would be something that you would want to look into depending on your institution and the major that you're applying for. For us specifically, test optional, we have an approach which we call a do no harm approach. So we really don't want the test scores to create any more anxiety for students than maybe they already do. So if you submit your test scores and they don't help your application, we won't consider them. So we can give you averages and say, if you fall within this range, this is typically what we see from applicants. But we want you to be proud of the work that you did on your test scores. If you feel as though they're an accurate reflection of your academic abilities, feel free to submit them. They won't hurt your application. They can only help your application. We really don't want that to be a barrier for families, and we don't want it, again, to cause any more stress in the process. So again, it's an approach at St. A's that will not hurt your application if you choose to submit them. But I would echo again, check with the schools that you're applying to and how they review those SATs or ACTs.
Yeah. So you may have seen fun headlines recently that some schools are going back to requiring testing. Dartmouth is one of those schools. So pre-COVID, historically, we have always required SAT or ACT testing with our applications. When COVID came, the College Board said, we can't host these tests anymore. Please don't require them because students can't take them safely. So we took a pause on that policy, and starting with this next year, 24-25, we are requiring testing again for domestic students, so students within the US, that is an ACT or an SAT score. If you're an international student sitting in this room, check out our website because there are a lot more ways you can submit testing because of the different options available to you where you are based. What I will say about kind of how we came to this decision is that we did a really robust study that you can read if you love graphs and want to know kind of the details behind how we came back to this. But essentially what it boils down to is that we found that SAT scores, ACT scores, when looking at in context of where you are from, which schools you are going to, are a really strong predictor of your success at our school. So we did this big sociological study. Bruce Sacerdote, Michelle Tyne, among other colleagues, ran this study, and we found that it was a really strong predictor. I think the key takeaway here is that we are looking at these scores, just like everything else, in your context and in your environment. So it might sometimes feel like, oh, if I don't have a 1600 on the SAT, my score's never going to look great. And that is not the case. We have a great podcast run by our dean who just released an episode all about testing. Highly recommend it, The Admissions Beat. I'll put a plug in there. But they just did a really great episode about how do you know if you should submit testing for a test optional school, or what does it mean if you have a 1200 in your really rural high school where not a lot of people take testing, and that's actually a really high score within the context of your school. And that's something we definitely want to see. So we are requiring that testing to come back with a lot of information coming around it. We are not looking at every single score on that 1600 scale and saying, here are averages. We're really finding ways to look at you within your context, within your own environment. And we're also working on ways to provide everyone with tools to understand your test score within your environment. So that is coming soon so that you can look at that. But we are returning to that, and you'll see other schools starting to pop up returning to that test policy. Know that your score might be stronger than you think it is when looked at in context. So that's really important.
I just really want to echo that point and love that you added in the piece about the validity study and the importance of the SAT at the particular institution. College admissions offices are just they're buried. We're buried in data because what we're doing is we're looking at the students that have our most likelihood of being successful at our institutions. We don't want to set students up for failure, so we're looking at data all the time. These are the students who do well at our school, and coming from a particular area, territory, schools, whatever challenges, whatever roadblocks, we know about all of that. We're taking that into consideration, and we're saying these are the students that do the best at our school. Now, those same validity studies may prove differently at another institution. Another institution may look at that in the SAT scores and the success of their students and see that there's no comparison there. So when you're looking at your schools, know that they're not just making that decision because, oh, we feel like throwing this back in or we feel like taking it out. It's that, no, they looked at, these are the students that do best at our school. We're not looking for reasons to deny students. We're looking for reasons to admit students that will do best at our school. The other test lingo is the test blind, and that's what Keene State is. So you can submit your test score, but it'll never be in front of the person reviewing your application. They will never see it. So why would you submit it? Well, you'd submit it if you were a student who was entering into a discipline that will require you at some point to take another test, like education that would require you to take a praxis exam, or you know that you want to go on to law school, so you'll be required to take the LSAT. You want those test scores in a record somewhere at Keene State so that your advisor and the people working with you, getting you ready for that next step, can say, oh, this is how they do on standardized tests. This is the work that we need to do with them. So those are students that I advise to send it, although we don't even look for it, because they're like, well, why would I even send it? Well, that's one of the reasons why you would send it. So you should ask your school if that would be something that they would use to support you after you're enrolled.
So we just talked about test optional for admission, but can we touch on how test optional schools may or may not use standardized scores in scholarship awarding? Peg, earlier you mentioned how with the GPA, that's a correlation at Keene for the merit-based scholarship. Does SAT play a figure into that? And if it doesn't for you, like, can you maybe share how another school might use it?
Sure, I'll jump in for Saint Anselm. So we do not use test scores for merit purposes or for scholarship purposes. It would only be to help your application in terms of admissibility. But like we said, it does depend on what major you're looking at too. And so I would say that submitting at St. A's, submitting your scores can only help your application. So it is worth submitting them if you're proud of those scores and you feel as though it may help your application.
Yeah, Dartmouth does not use any of your information from your application for your financial aid. So we do not have merit scholarships or athletic scholarships or arts scholarships. We give financial aid purely based on your demonstrated financial need, and we guarantee to meet 100% of that financial need. So the test score is not factoring into the financial aid that you would receive from our institution.
So mentioned earlier was when most institutions took that turn because of the inability to take the SATs, and we didn't want anything to do with COVID to be an obstacle for any student enrolling in college. So that was our opportunity to pull back. So schools like Keene State, we saw that opportunity to say, okay, let's look at these students, because we continue to require it for any students in our honors program and our nursing program. And we saw the opportunity there when we pulled back because of COVID to say, well, these students didn't take the test, how are they doing? And again, we studied it, we looked at the data and saw that it really wasn't making a difference in the honors cohort or in the nursing cohort, that those students, it was their GPA that was really the determining factor of how successful they were in both of those programs. So we only used it for a very brief period of time, and then we pulled back on the SAT for everything.
And there are some schools that could be admitted without the SAT, but get a better scholarship with the SAT. I think these schools are starting to pull back a little bit because they realize how confusing that can be. Wait, you tell me I don't need it for admission, so I didn't submit it, but my scholarship's $3,000 less because I didn't submit an SAT score. So they're starting to pull back, but again, as the familiar refrain from today is like, make sure you're checking in with schools. If they have that test optional policy, see if it how they use it in the review process, and then also how they may use it in the scholarship process. This is, again, one of those ones that vary greatly across institutions, but how do majors that students list on their application impact their admission decision? Does applying undecided hurt their chances? And what if a student doesn't get into that intended major? Lots to dive into there.
Sure, I can start. My answer is a little bit easier to this question because at Dartmouth, you don't declare your major until about halfway through your sophomore year. So you will tell us some of your academic interest areas when you apply, so we can see kind of what you might be interested in. If you say you're interested in history and then you write all your essays about that, we'll be like, wow, they did a lot of research about themselves and they nailed it. But it doesn't mean that you're applying to a program. So when you apply to Dartmouth College, you're applying to the undergraduate college at large, and then you can select any major within that undergraduate college once you become a student at Dartmouth. So you don't need to apply to a specific program. You, in fact, cannot apply to a specific program at Dartmouth.
So we have one program that we would consider like a direct entry program, and that would be nursing. So it is a capped program, meaning that we have a limited number of seats. So we do, my advice is if you're even considering nursing, do your research at schools that you're planning to apply to, because the nursing process can be very different. And oftentimes you would have to apply directly into that program from the beginning. Transferring in later or changing your major in the application process might not be an option at that institution. So we require our nursing students to declare that major on their application, and they then are reviewed in the early action and early decision process only. So that is a capped program, so we do review specifically for that program. Outside of that, though, we welcome those that wander. If you are coming in undeclared, I joke it's our largest major here. We love that. That's the benefits of the liberal arts. So you can kind of dip your feet in a little bit, take it slow, figure some things out. You'll work with an undeclared advisor. So that is not necessarily a negative in the admission process. We see that from a lot of our students. And again, I do think that's the benefits of the liberal arts. You can take your time to sort of figure things out. You can also change your major in the process, aside from nursing. We get that a lot. We say, oh, I put down history, but I'm thinking I want education. No problem. We can do that for you. So we review for all those majors equally. Nursing is a little bit different, but if you do apply for nursing, we might feel that you're a good academic fit for St. A's. You might just not have a spot in the nursing program. So we may reach out and say, we'd love to have you here. Is there another program that you might be interested in? And we work with families and students on that process as well, too. So that's a good question to ask if you're looking for a school and a specific program. If it is a capped program and they might have a different admit rate specifically for that program, what are the other options if I don't get into that one? I think the biggest thing is, too, I previously worked at what you would consider a professional college or an institute of technology, and each major had different admission requirements. So there were specific levels of math courses that you had to take in high school for different majors, specifically in engineering. So that's a really important thing to know. And you, starting as early as you are in the process, have time to make those calls and say, you know, what type of math do I have to have for mechanical engineering or whatever it may be. So every school is a little bit different, but it is a great question, again, to ask to some of those top programs, top schools that you're looking at.
And I will say, because we're in New Hampshire, right? UNH, when we talk to students, there's a lot of people that want to get into the engineering program at UNH. They do have additional math, science, and GPA requirements. So if you're one of those people sitting in the room thinking about engineering at UNH, or they have a couple other programs with some additional requirements, again, just be checking on that and making sure that you're not getting to the application process and saying, oh, it's too late to add that class for my senior year. What does it mean when a student's application is deferred? And what's the difference between waitlisted and deferred?
Sure. This is another one that I'm going to guess all three of us may answer this differently because the defer process at each institution is very different. So what it means to defer at Keene State is that you have submitted your application for admission, supplied all the documents, we read the application, and we offered you admission. And then you called us, and for many different reasons. It could be that a gap year to travel or for service. It could be health reasons. It could be financial, that you say, I would like to defer 1 semester or 1 year. We will defer up to 1 year, which means that we will move that offer of admissions and say to you, sure, you can come that next semester, you can come that following year. If you do enroll at another college or university, we will need to see the transcripts from that school, and we will review your application again, because you will need to meet the requirements of a transfer student at that point. But if you don't, if it really is specifically for service or travel or financial or whatever it is, and you're going to be separated and not going to school, then the offer does stand for 1 semester or 1 year. Waitlisted would mean that our class capacity has been reached, that we are at max capacity for our class, but we would offer you to be on our wait list. And so as students, because what happens over the summer, the reality of it is that none of us like this, but we have our classes that the preferred deadline, that the deadline is May 1st. Everyone understands that most schools are going to ask for an enrollment deposit by May 1st. And then over the summer, you have some shifting. You have some students, for one reason or the other, are not able to attend. Could be some of the reasons I've already stated. So then those spaces open up and people get pulled off of the wait list. You also, to keep in mind, is we have wait lists within the college in both our nursing program and our honors program. And so if you are a student, like we've reached our capacity in our nursing program and it was sooner than we thought, then we would say we can place you on the waiting list, and if someone happens to decide not to come to Keene State or change their major, you could have that spot. And the same thing within our honors program. In fact, our honors program, we're already working on our wait list. So if students do decide not to come to Keene State or not be in the honors program, then we can take them off of the wait list.
Yeah, I can talk about what this means in kind of another way. So sometimes you'll hear the word defer as you were admitted, and now you are taking a year or a semester off and kind of deferring that entry date. The other time you might hear the word defer is if you're applying early decision to a school. If you are reviewed in that pool and the college decides we actually want to see this applicant in our greater, larger pool during regular decision, they may give you the decision of defer. So if you are a deferred student from early decision, it means that your application is still in the mix and we're going to revisit it in the regular decision pool. So it means instead of getting your kind of final decision in that December, January time, you're going to get that later with everyone else from regular decision. So that's the other time you might hear the word defer. There's lots of lingo. The other thing I'll just mention for wait list is, so for Dartmouth, we are trying to fill about 1,200 seats in our first year class. And we are admitting a certain number of students to try to fill those seats, but we will also offer a spot on our wait list to many students who are really qualified and really wonderful, but aren't able to be offered a seat in that kind of first round. So similarly, as things shake out, as we see how many students are choosing us to come to next year, we might start pulling people off the wait list. So if you are offered a spot on a wait list at a school that you really, really love, I highly recommend taking that spot on the wait list and kind of responding and saying, like, yes, I would like to be on the wait list. Please contact me if a spot is available.
I'll just add a little bit to that piece. We're very similar at St. A's to what Dartmouth just said. What I would add is if you are placed on a wait list and that school is still a top choice for you, this is where your demonstrated interest could come into play in terms of, you know, an additional letter asking the school, you know, is there anything else I can send in? Maybe an updated transcript or a letter just, again, telling us a little bit more about yourself and your interest in that school. So every school, again, is a little bit different and they treat their wait list very differently, but that could be a time for you to say, yes, I'm still interested. I've accepted the spot on the wait list. Here's more information about me and how much I really want a spot at your institution.
And likewise, if you accept a spot on the wait list, but then you visit another school, fall in love, let the school you know you're on the wait list know that you're not coming. It helps their processing, and it helps them offer that spot to the next person on the wait list. And the same thing once you pay your deposit somewhere, right? It helps the colleges, and it'll help you get less emails if you let the other colleges know that you have enrolled somewhere else, because they will take you off their list, and then they will stop pestering you to see if you want to enroll there, and it'll cut down on your clutter, so you're just getting the communications from the school that you're enrolling at about those next summer steps. While we're on deferrals and wait lists, and how do your institutions view a gap year, right? There might be students in this room right now who are saying, I'm thinking about college next year, but I'm also thinking maybe doing a year with AmeriCorps, or I'm going to go backpack across Europe, or I just need some time to save some money up, right? So can you all talk a little bit about how you view that in the application review process?
I think it's great. We love students that, you know, maybe want to do something that might be a little bit different. We actually have a partnership with City Year AmeriCorps. So students, we have additional scholarship opportunities for City Year alum and those who do a year of service, so some additional scholarship money there for you. And there are a lot of creative ways that you can actually do a gap year. And so for us, as long as you maintain communication with us, let us know what your plans are. We think it's a wonderful opportunity for students, and every student is different, every path is different. So if that's something you're considering, I think it's great, personally. Have a plan, though. That's definitely the key there. Have a plan, think about what you're going to do, and then let us know in the application process. Share it with us. Tell us why you did the gap year, maybe what you learned from it, and that can definitely help in the application process.
All right. And I think that make a plan is really important, because once you get out of school, if you wait 2 or 3 years, it can be a lot harder to get back as you establish that life outside of school. So have the plan, but have the plan to get back as well. I think I skipped one. Okay, I thought there was a question about FAFSA in there, but I wanted to before we get into the best advice, but I just want to mention a little bit about the FAFSA delays people are hearing this year and what the expectation is for the FAFSA process to look like for them next year, right? There might be some people in here who have a sibling going through this right now and hearing that the FAFSA is a bit of a nightmare, but what is the hope for 2025 for the FAFSA process?
That it's going to be wonderful, and there will be no issues, and we will have a process in place, and the communication will be clear and concise and transparent. That is our hope. I don't think it can get any worse than this year, I'll be very honest. So it can only go up from here. So I think unless you have another child going through it right now, they should have things figured out for next year. So I let the parents and the students right now going through the process worry about it, and just enjoy what you're doing right now. Take all the information you can in this process, specifically today, and I think it's going to be much better. I am hopeful.
And does anybody want to mention why filing the FAFSA is important?
Can I just add one thing and then we can say that? Okay. So just to add on to that, in the nightmare that's happening this year, the intent was to simplify the process and make more funds available for more people. That is what's great about this, because the form has been simplified. We've all seen it, and we all saw the old one. Trust me, if this is your first student going to college, and next year when it's all perfected and it's the current form they're using now and the formulas they're using, you will be very happy. If you filled it out once before, years ago, and now you're going to fill it out with this student, you will be very happy, because it really will be simplified. It's just all the behind the scenes with the Department of Ed and them getting all of their information in place and being able to send it on to us. That's a nightmare. But, you know, that happens in all change, right? You know, you just think technology is great till it's not. So the importance of filling out the financial aid form. At a place like Keene State, we encourage everyone to fill out the financial aid form. In fact, we give you a $500 prize for doing it. So there are specific things that we think are so important for students in the application process. And we thought, well, let's incentivize those things, because then it will really convey to the students the importance of that for us. Completing the financial aid form is very important to us. That's not a guarantee that you're all going to receive something from the financial aid process, but it gives us an opportunity to see, even if you don't have the need, we may look at your financial aid form and say, okay, they have this SAI, which was once the expected family contribution, of this high, and they're really not eligible for any need. But you know what? We can give them some more Keene State scholarship, because they're on the verge of, they're on the cusp of. So it's important for everyone to fill out the financial aid form. I know that in New Hampshire this year, it's a requirement for a high school graduation. I'm not sure how well that's going in the schools, and I know that you can appeal it. So we'll find out after the first year how that goes. But it really is an important process, and it won't be the way it has been in the past.
At Granite Edvance, we hear families call and say, I got into the FAFSA, but I think I made a mistake and only took 10 minutes. That's what the new process is going to look like. So next year, when y'all are doing it, all the kinks should be worked out, and it should be a much smoother process. So final question for the panelists, and then we'll open it up to questions from the audience. But what's your best advice, right? One thing for them to take away.
I'll jump in. I'm going to speak to the students directly in the room in this moment. My students in this room, my best advice to you is at some point in the next 6 months to find somewhere quiet, without a parent or an adult in your life and think about what you're really excited for in college. You obviously then need to go back to those support systems in your life and discuss those things, but this is going to be one of the first choices you're making about your path in life that isn't a given just based on where you have grown up or where your family has been, where your supports have been. You are about to choose where you are going to spend the next 2 to 4 years, beyond that, what types of programs you might want to do, the things you might want to study, the types of people you want to be surrounded with. So take some time to think outside of your high school, outside of your home, about what that future looks like for you, so that you can then bring that information into the conversation that you're having with your guidance counselor and with your family and your supporters about what are the things you're most hopeful for as you look into this next big step that you're going to take.
My advice is kind of silly, but I'm hopeful it helps keep you organized. So I'm also speaking to the students in the room because this is really your process. Maybe create a new email just for your college communication. It sounds very silly, but it will help sort of separate that part of your life. We all get those promotional emails from Target and Walmart and whatever it may be, and your email is cluttered, very cluttered, all of them. And so the college communication can often get lost in there. And so if you create a separate Gmail, also an appropriate email, we've seen just about every email address under the sun. So, Julie Landman at gmail.com, juliecollege@gmail.com, something that is professional, can maybe be a professional email later on, but really help keep you organized. All your email communication will go to one email address. It will be easy to sort. Here's also a pro tip. Colleges are required to have an opt-out and an unsubscribe button in all of their emails. If you're getting emails from a college that you absolutely know you are not going to or is not on your list, you can opt out or unsubscribe. People probably don't want me to be saying that up here, but it helps to keep the colleges that are on your list organized in your email. If you want to share that with a parent or somebody else who is a support system for you, you can do that too, absolutely. But your email and controlling all of that, keeping it organized, will help you keep this all organized in the process.
So I'm going to fast forward next year, this time. And we're talking a lot about the application process. I want to just fast forward because my advice is on the decision. So yesterday at Admitted Student Day, I'm talking to families and saying, isn't it interesting that you thought that the college search process was the most difficult part of this? Getting your applications in, collecting your recommendations, completing the FAFSA. You thought that was the most difficult part. Now you've been accepted at 5 schools that you absolutely love. And now you have to make a decision. So that's my fast forward. And I'm going to say, when you're in the decision process, choose a college that shares your values. College will shape who you are and who you're going to become. So make sure during your research, you determine what are the values of that institution and do I share those values with them. Now, the other part of my advice is for families. So wherever your funding is coming from, if there's anyone in your life, parent, guardian, grandparent, aunt, uncle, friend, whoever, that is going to help you finance your education. You're here now. That's wonderful. You're wonderful. So everyone in this room should sit down in the next day and talk about, this is how much we have to contribute to your education. $1, $1 million, doesn't matter. Just be clear with your students, this is how much we have to offer. That was the first conversation that we had with our children when they were researching colleges. And I said, this is what we have to give to you. I'm not selling the house to send you to college. I've saved, this is what I have to give you, and that's it. And then they had to make the decision on how, whatever school they chose, if it required financing above that, then that was going to be their responsibility. So have those conversations immediately if there is someone. And then you always have Granite Edvance that has all of the other options on how to finance your education, and I can't speak highly enough for them. They probably want to stop communicating with all of us because the number of people that we send to them every single day, they're probably sorry they're our friends, but we send everybody their way because they will help you in those other areas and finding those resources.
Thanks for that, Peg. So we have about 15 minutes left, so we're going to open up to questions from the audience. My amazing colleague Danielle is going to run around, get her steps in to get the microphones to people. We got the first question right here. Thank you for being ready to ask the first question. Round of applause.
I don't know if time warrants this question. Okay. What makes an essay stand apart when you're reading, 100,000 essays? So, thank you.
Just as I mentioned before, we have seen every essay topic under the sun. And so I think students often say, you might joke, but I have read an essay about a student being struck by lightning 3 times. So not everyone's going to be struck by lightning 3 times, right? It doesn't have to be this big, amazing story. It just has to be unique to that student. So the other tip that I have, students will usually want to write about somebody that maybe was important in their life. But I then walk away from the essay and I say, well, I learned a lot about their mother. I don't know anything more about the student. And so we really want to make sure that the student voice is there. First, that it's written well, have proofread and proofread again and have somebody else proofread. But that we learn about the student. So share the story, but share it from your perspective and let us know maybe something that you learned along the way or something that you're passionate about. It needs to be your voice as the student. And so that's something I can't stress enough. It doesn't have to be this big, crazy, amazing story of being struck by lightning 3 times. It just has to be your voice so that I walk away and I say, that was Sarah's essay. Like, I learned a lot about her.
The other thing I'll say on essays that I think can be really helpful is once you've written your essay, find someone that knows you really well and have them read it and see if it sounds like you. Because the goal is for us to get a kind of snapshot of you in that moment. And sometimes it's really hard to look at ourselves and know how authentically we're telling that story. So if you have a friend or a teacher or someone in your life that you feel like kind of has spent a lot of time with you and knows you well and you feel comfortable sharing in that essay, it can be really helpful to be like, all right, is this a snapshot of me? Likely they will say yes, but sometimes they'll be like, oh, that was a strange choice that I wasn't expecting from you. Let's talk about kind of where that's coming from. Are we headed in this direction? And that can just be a helpful conversation.
I'm going to take it one step further and say that the essay and the entire application process, I overuse the word be genuine. Don't try to impress me. Be genuine. That's how you will impress me. And it includes the list of activities that you think you need to include on your application, or you've joined 20 extra clubs because somebody said that's what the colleges want to see. Be genuine. I want to know who you are. You could be in one activity. You could have a part-time job because you're helping pay bills at home. That's what I want to know about you, that you were responsible, that you were loyal, that you showed up every day, or whatever role you played in that one organization. It can be 20. I'm not trying to, to say anything about the students that choose that route, but it doesn't have to be that route. You are not writing your application or your essay to impress me. You are writing it from your voice, you being genuine, and that's what's going to impress me the most.
Prior to being at Granite Edvance, I was also in an admissions office, and the one thing that turned me off on an essay more than anything is when I know you picked up a thesaurus and picked a bunch of 14-letter words, and the sentence is like, I don't even know what that means, right? So I think that your voice piece is really, really important. All right, who's got the next one? We'll go right here for convenience for Danielle.
So disregarding essay, GPA, and SAT scores, how can I make my application into something that will stand out to colleges?
That's it. So you're saying, how can you make yourself stand out? You can make yourself stand out in your essay. You can make yourself stand out by working really hard in school every single day. You can make yourself stand out by the people who are writing your recommendations and what they're writing about you, but that's exactly how you do it for me.
Being engaged in the process is a great way to stand out. I love working with parents and family members, but I love working with students even more. That's why we do this work. So when we receive an email directly from a student advocating for themselves, maybe it's for scholarship purposes, or maybe it's because you were placed on a wait list. When I hear from the student, when I receive a phone call from a student, I cannot tell you how far that can go in the application process. It says so much about the student, and that they can have a conversation with an adult they don't know on the phone and advocate for themselves. It can say a lot and can speak volumes. As long as you are engaged in the process and can show that to us, it can go a long way.
And I think the emphasis is on student communication, right? Making that come from the student, not the parent. We love parents. We want you to be bought in on the process, but we want to be hearing from the student.
This is more of a straightforward question, but if you apply early action and you get accepted, do you have to decide whether or not you're going to go to that school before regular decision students get accepted and also have to decide?
So it does depend on your application plan. So early decision is the only one that typically has the binding plan. So that has a different notification deadline. Depending on the original deadline, they will be very transparent and say if you apply ED, you have to submit your enrollment deposit by January 1st. Everyone else, though, has the same deadline, typically May 1st. This year, we'll see. Everything's a little bit different, but it does not, when you're admitted, does not impact when you have to make that decision for all non-binding plans.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just speak from my personal college application experience. Early action is really wonderful because it means that you have a decision from a college much earlier in the process, and that can let your shoulders relax and let you take a deep breath when you get to regular decision, because you have somewhere that hopefully you've done enough research into that you're really excited about, and now you're doing kind of the rest of the process so you have other options. But early action, the one that is not binding, is a really incredible tool, especially if you feel ready to apply in that early round, so that you have a couple of schools or a school that you know you've been admitted to, and you kind of have that on the table for yourself. Early decision is binding. I'm going to keep saying it because the names are so similar and it can be very confusing. So only apply early decision if that is your number one choice. You've done all your research and you know you want to go there.
And then just shout out to our rolling admissions friends. If they're like your top school, you can apply in October and they're going to get an answer to you. It's like just because they don't have early action doesn't mean you can't have that same benefit of an early decision coming back to you. All right, who's next? Right behind you, Danielle.
Hopefully I can ask this simply and not be overcomplicated, but there's been some controversy in our high school over the past couple of years because they've changed the grading system multiple times, and they keep on saying, don't worry, there's the school profile. But if you have grades as a 9th grader, it's not a A, B, C, D grading system. And then they translate that your freshman year into a GPA. But then your sophomore year, that letter grade gets transcribed into a different GPA. How much time is a college admissions officer reading the school profile to understand all the different year-to-year changes in that school? Or does it just go to the bottom of the pile?
We're spending as much time as we need to understand that school report, and often schools that have gone through some kind of change will like put in big bold letters on the front page, we had a change in this year, please note that the grades might look different, especially if it's changed back and forth. Or they'll say like, here is what we've done with the GPA, this is how we considered those first year courses into this new system. And we will take the time to really understand what that means, because we can't understand one of the key pieces of the application, your transcript, without taking the time to do that. So we do take the time to understand changes, understand what that might mean for your transcript, especially if it looks like it's changed year to year and you have letters one place and numbers another place. Many students will change schools from one year to another, and we also have to understand how those two different schools might have kind of used their GPA or used their grading system. So we are genuinely taking the time to understand how those things change.
I should come run around with you, probably.
Getting exercise.
Right.
Thank you. Sorry. Is it possible to apply to 2 different schools for early action, or should I just stick to one?
Early decision is one. Early action, you can apply to as many early action schools as you want. So if you're ready to apply in all your schools that you're interested in have early action, you can apply to all of those schools early action.
How important is a passion project for the applications? How important is a passion project in the application process?
Yeah, passion projects are great if you're passionate about them. Don't do a passion project because someone said to do a passion project. Contrary to popular belief, we can tell when you aren't passionate about your passion project, and it is equally painful for us to read about them as it was for you to do them because you were told to do them. So if you have a passion project, if you've been working on something and it has been a big part of your life, definitely tell us about it. We want to know about it. Do not fall into the trap of people saying, you should do a passion project because it looks great on your college application. That's no longer a passion project. That is a chore. And chores are less fun for us to experience on your application. So passion, yes. Chores, no, in the application.
So much. If we do apply early decision, is there a way for us to understand what kind of financial aid compensation that we're going to receive? Or is this just kind of something that we dive into and we know that we might have to pay everything?
Yeah, an excellent question. For early decision, you will receive your financial aid package with your acceptance letter. So you will know what it looks like. That being said, you should do the research ahead of time to make sure that that school is financially within the realm of what you are expecting to pay for college. There are some great net price calculators. Any college that gives out federal aid is required to have one on their website. So you can run those net price calculators to kind of get an estimate for those schools, and that will give you a sense before applying if that school is within financial range for you. But you will know, and also if you are accepted and you are like, wow, this is different than we expected, you can talk to the financial aid office about that as well.
All right, we probably got time for 2 more. So.
Hi. So I have a question about just like ED. So if I apply to my top choice and I apply early decision, but get then put into regular decision, should I be worried, and what could that mean?
You should not be worried. It means that we just want to see your application in that other pool. So we get a certain number during early decision of people that are applying knowing we're your first choice. We get many more applications in the regular decision round. And sometimes we just need more information and we need more context from that pool to make a decision. If you apply early decision and you are deferred to that regular round, you should apply to other schools. You should not just wait to get your decision from us. It's time to kind of kick into gear. That tends to happen around the Thanksgiving holiday winter time. So if you're applying early decision somewhere, make sure you have a plan of what schools you plan to apply for if you do not get into that first choice early decision school, because that is not a fun time to be scrambling to put together a college list. So make sure you have that plan in place, but you shouldn't be worried. It just means we want to see that application later on.
When considering gap years, is it best to apply for colleges before you take the gap year or during it?
I think it depends. It depends on what your gap year is, where you're at in your process. We see both. I know Peg talked a little bit about deferring your admission, and so it's a good question to ask the schools. Is it okay that I postpone my admission 1 year or 1 semester? So I think it's a unique situation depending on what your gap year is and where you'll be and where you're at in the process. But we don't see it negatively either way, so it's just unique to the student.
When you research the school and they tell you what the defer process is, sometimes it's easier to just do it while you're a senior in high school because you have all of the resources there to help you submit it. So that might be one reason why I would say do it then. But if you haven't decided at that point where you want to apply to, then everything Julie said.
So I know there's a couple other hands that went up. So there's going to be a great college fair at the end of the day where there's going to be over 60 colleges, so you can ask them those questions there. If you have something specific for somebody who's on the stage right now, I'm sure they'd be more than happy to chat with you. But thank you for coming to this session. Hope this was helpful. Know that all the colleges here, any college you're reaching out to is there to help. All of us at Granite Edvance can also be an unbiased resource for you throughout the process. You have about 15 minutes until the next workshops start. If you need some directions, there's people up on the top. I also said, please don't ask me because I'm lost on this campus. But thank you for coming and enjoy the rest of the day and hope to see you at the college fair.